night, dripping wax and chalice black, conjured souls that won't turn back.
Welcome to the Brethren of the Morning Star. I'm your host, Magister Cankerworm. Sex is dangerous. Diabolists who think otherwise are fooling themselves. The need for it can drive some people to commit the most reckless actions of their lives. Romantic love can warp the mind, blind us to the truth, cause us in a moment of passion to throw away what has taken a lifetime to build. It can even lead to murder, whether out of possessive jealousy or suicidal despair. It should be of no surprise, then, that so many traditional societies have sought to regulate lust and sexual expression through various laws and cultural institutions. This isn't the concern of one particular religion, but of all human social groupings, not only because sex can wreak so much interpersonal havoc, but because it has biological consequences most of us would prefer not be ignored. Sex, between men and women at least, sometimes produces offspring. Human babies require a tremendous investment of time and resources to raise. Communities have a vested interest in making sure the appropriate parties take responsibility for those offspring, rather than sloughing them off to become everyone else's burden. The diabolist is not obligated to observe the sexual mores of the culture they were raised or reside in, though neither are they obligated to toss them off with headlong abandon. Love for the devil worshipper should be free to come and go and find its own way without the interference of meddlesome third parties, be they religious, political, or social. Even one's own reason must sometimes bow to the dictates of lust. Notice, however, that it is said reason must sometimes bow to the dictates of lust. All of the infernal virtues are in some sense dangerous. Actions have repercussions, and a reckless diabolist may soon find themselves reaping a host of unintended consequences. Because the popular understanding of devil worship is so centered on sexual lawlessness, however, this danger is perhaps truest of all with regard to lust. Fictional portrayals of the Black Mass treat it less as a serious spiritual rite and more of an excuse for decadents to gather and spice up their otherwise staid sex lives. Sadly, many diabolists willingly swallow this misunderstanding as readily as their non-satanic counterparts. The belief that it will get them laid, or at least afford them a glance of bare titty, is likely what drew many Satanists, theistic or otherwise, into the fold in the first place. This isn't to say devil worship can't be sexy, because it most certainly can, but it should be more than just sexy dress-up time. Before the diabolist lies two extremes that each must find their path between, namely, straight-jacketed Puritanism on the one hand, and mindless hedonism on the other. We do have some general guidance, though, to help us navigate between these two poles. The bedrock of satanic sexual ethics is consent. Anton LaVey emphasized the importance of, quote, the mating signal, which is a colorful way to speak of receiving that consent. Consent is a surprisingly complex topic, which not only is beyond this particular video, but perhaps myself as an individual to cover with anything more than a cursory treatment. Some people prefer that consent be explicitly obtained before any sexual contact can occur. For others, consent can be nonverbal and implied. Some people prefer that sex appear non-consensual in order to fulfill their particular tastes and kinks. It's a broad spectrum. All that said, the bedrock of consent does mean diabolists are forbidden from committing rape and pedophilia. Since we live in a time when silence can be construed by some to be a form of political violence, let me be perfectly clear that by rape, I mean physically coercing someone to participate in a sexual act against their will. Performing a sexual act upon someone who is physically unable to register their non-consent, in other words, someone who is unconscious or paralyzed and mute, or having sex with someone who is too mentally impaired to give meaningful consent. While an argument could be made that prepubescent children are technically capable of voicing consent, even the ancient and pederastic Greeks agreed that until puberty, a young person was unable to understand what they were consenting to. Further, they, along with modern psychology, were also aware of the stultifying effect that prepubescent sex has on a child's later development. With regard to the sexual lives of others, the Diabolist is duty-bound to observe a policy of live and let live. We don't have to celebrate other people's sexual predilections. We don't have to like them or even validate them if we don't feel so inclined. But, accepting pedophilia and rape, the Diabolist can't use coercion, state-sanctioned or otherwise, to stand in the way of another person's sexual choices. Consent and liberality. That's the minimalist gist of our sexual morals. This greatly simplifies the questions a devil worshipper could have with regard to acceptable sexual practices. If it isn't rape or pedophilia, which in essence are the same thing, it's perfectly acceptable. Love is the law. Love and do what or whom you will. Careful and thoughtful viewers may be somewhat uncomfortable how much this leaves open to personal preference and taste. What about incest? What about bestiality? What about kinks with high health risks, such as bug chasing? To that, the Satanist says, well, what about them? If there isn't a lack of informed consent involved, with regard to humans at least, then we have nothing of substance to object to. I will admit, there are many kinks I personally find downright distasteful. Bestiality is one. But many vegans would find the fact that I am a hunter morally repugnant. This isn't going to stop me from killing and eating a deer, so why should some chick who wants to fuck her dog worry about what I think of it? I challenge viewers appalled by the wide openness of Satanism on this front to examine where precisely their outrage comes from. Is it the law of the universe speaking through their conscience, or the moral hearsay of their friends, family, and neighbors? Is it truth with a capital T that stands against these things, or cultural preference? I want to close with an excerpt from Aleister Crowley's On Sexual Freedom. Quote, "Sexual nature of man is his most intense expression of himself. His subconsciousness endeavors thereby to inform his consciousness of his will. Sex is thus rarely intelligible to its possessor, save in very partial and ambiguous terms. It is supremely sacred to him, and to interfere with its expression, or to try to edit it, is an abominable crime. But it is this sacredness which makes some people think that their personal peculiarities are universal truths. This error has caused more disasters than all others combined, for the warfare is an unmitigated mistake, and is conducted with insane cruelty on account of the atrocious suffering inflicted by even trifling wounds, which almost always cripple and hardly ever kill. The curse of moral deformation is hereditary, and the whole organism is infected by the disease of this one part, which is the generating idea whereby the character of the whole is determined. It requires elaborate investigation and indefatigable efforts to eliminate the error. The wound must be probed and cleaned thoroughly before it can heal. Anesthetics and salves aggravate the case. We cannot in this place enter into details of curative treatment, which differs with each patient. But the underlying principle in all is to establish understanding of the nature of sex, to make all its forms familiar and all equally proper to the person who prefers them. The patient is accustomed to analyze shock, and so to become immune to it. He is taught to observe his own reactions to various practices, so as to perfect his technique. As the cure proceeds, it constantly occurs that various aberrations of the instinct, supposed ineradicable, disappear, or at least lose their importance. It ends in serene self-confidence and in total destruction of the power of perverse irritation to interrupt the functions of the mind." End quote. Or to express it in terms of another Crowleyism, love is the law, love under will. Again, I'm Magister Cankerworm. We'll see you next time.
Ancient sigils in the ground whisper